It was around 2:30 in the morning when I woke up to the sound of knocking. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, the kind of noise that blends into your sleep until you realize it's real. But then I heard it again. 3 sharp raps on my front door. I froze in bed listening. I lived alone at the time in a small 1-bedroom house that backed up to a stretch of woods. Not the kind of place you'd expect late-night visitors. My stomach dropped because I didn't have family nearby, and none of my friends would ever show up at that hour. The knocking didn't stop. I slipped out of bed and crept toward the door, careful not to make too much noise. My heart was pounding so loud in my chest I swore whoever was outside could hear it. I didn't open the door. Instead, I leaned in close and peeked through the peephole. Nobody was there. The porch light was on and I had a clear view of my front steps, but it was empty. Just the quiet, still night. I stepped back, confused. Maybe it was a prank? Some kid sneaking around the neighborhood? Then it came again. Only this time it sounded like it came from the back door. The back door was in the kitchen, facing the tree line of the woods. My blood ran cold. Whoever it was had walked around my house. I wanted to call the police, but when I grabbed my phone, I realized it was dead. I'd forgotten to plug it in that night. I slowly made my way toward the kitchen, every nerve in my body on edge. My back door didn't have a peephole, but it did have a thin curtain. I inched it back just enough to look outside, and there he was, a man, standing perfectly still, his face tilted up toward the door. His expression was blank, his eyes wide, and his clothes looked dirty, almost torn. As soon as I made eye contact through the glass, he smiled. Not a normal smile, but this wide, unsettling grin that made my skin crawl. Then he lifted his hand and knocked again, slow and deliberate. I stumbled back, heart in my throat. I didn't want to scream, didn't want to do anything that might provoke him. I grabbed the biggest kitchen knife I owned and hid in my bedroom closet, my body shaking uncontrollably. The knocking continued, first at the back door, then silence, then at the front door again, like he was circling the house. This went on for nearly 20 minutes. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I stayed hidden until the sun came up. When I finally worked up the courage to step outside, there was no sign of anyone. No footprints in the dirt. No handprints on the glass. Nothing. To this day, I don't know who that man was or what he wanted. But sometimes when I close my eyes at night, I can still hear that slow, deliberate sound echoing in my head. When I was in college, I lived off campus in a small house I rented with 2 roommates. It wasn't the nicest neighborhood, but the rent was cheap and we were all broke students, so it worked. One night I was home alone. Both my roommates were gone for the weekend, and I was looking forward to having the place to myself. I stayed up late, binge-watching shows and eating junk food until I finally crawled into bed around 1 a.m. That's when I heard it. A knock at the front door. At first, I thought I imagined it, but then it came again. Not loud, not aggressive, just a soft, steady knocking. I grabbed my phone, thinking maybe one of my roommates had come back early and forgot their key. But when I checked the time, it was almost 2 in the morning. That didn't make sense. I hesitated, then crept down the hallway and toward the living room. The knocking continued, slow and rhythmic. My stomach tightened. I didn't have a peephole in the front door, so I pulled the curtain of the window just a crack. There was a man standing there. He looked older, maybe mid-40s, wearing a dark jacket. He wasn't holding anything, just standing with his hands in his pockets, staring straight at the door. I froze. My first thought was that maybe he was lost. But something about the way he stood there, motionless, expressionless, made every instinct in me scream, "Don't open that door." I called out, "Who is it?" The man didn't answer. He just tilted his head slightly like he was listening. Then he knocked again. My chest tightened. "You need to leave," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. He still didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer to the door. His face pressed almost against it. And then, in this low, raspy voice, he whispered, "Let me in." I felt my blood run cold. I backed away from the door, heart racing, and dialed 911. I explained what was happening, whispering into the phone as I locked myself in the bathroom. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and that police were on the way. Meanwhile, the knocking got louder, faster. He was pounding on the door now, rattling it in its frame, all while whispering over and over again, "Let me in, let me in, let me in." I thought for sure he was going to break it down. Then silence. When the police finally arrived about 10 minutes later, the man was gone. They searched the area but didn't find anyone. What they did find, though, made my skin crawl. On the back door and the side windows of the house, there were smudged handprints, like he had been circling the house the whole time trying to find a way in. The cops told me I did the right thing by not opening the door. And to this day, I still don't know what would have happened if I had. This happened about 5 years ago when I was living alone in a small apartment complex. My unit was on the second floor, tucked in the back, so it was usually pretty quiet. One night around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound that at first I thought was part of a dream. It was faint but steady, like someone knocking softly on a door. I sat up, confused, and waited. Then it came again. I got up, thinking maybe one of my neighbors was getting a really late-night visitor. But when I pressed my ear to my own door, my heart skipped. The knocking was coming from my side. I froze. Nobody I knew would be at my place at 3 a.m. I didn't even hear footsteps in the hallway leading up to my door, just the knocking. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just another slow set of knocks. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, phone in my hand, debating whether I should call the cops. Then the knocking stopped. I thought maybe whoever it was had left, until I heard it again. This time from my bedroom window. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My apartment was on the second floor. There was no balcony, no ledge, no possible way for someone to be standing outside that window. I backed into the hallway, my entire body shaking. Then I heard it again from the kitchen window. It was as if whatever, or whoever it was circling my apartment, knocking at every entry point. I sat in the hallway with the lights on until the sun came up. When I finally worked up the courage to look outside, there was nothing. No footprints, no sign of anyone having been there. But that night, at the exact same time, the knocking started again. And it happened the night after that. And the night after that. For weeks, always at 3 a.m. Always 3 knocks. Always moving from door to window to window. I moved out a month later. And to this day, I've never figured out who or what was trying to get in.